agree with Rajat that it's going to give a directional clarity that NDA is ahead.
Okay, we'll wait and see how this is translating into numbers as per the Axis My India poll. But I want to get in quick comments from Manisha and Javed. Manisha, you first there. Do you get a sense that we are now witnessing perhaps a tough fight if these numbers hold, particularly the Jan Suraaj at 4%? Should the Jan Suraaj be underpolled by some circumstance, this election could change again.
Let me not get to the pivot point of Jan Suraaj, but let me say that at these numbers, at 41 and 43, it still seems like an election which is about Nitish and which is about Lalu. The fulcrum of these elections is still a lot about those who are anti-Lalu and wouldn't want to get him and his ilk back. And it is still about Nitish and those who would want to say thank you, even in the sunset day of politics. Yes, a pivot coming out, but remember, Jan Suraaj and Prashant Kishor have their origins in the support that he lended once to Nitish. I do see these numbers as very credible. It did seem like a neck-and-neck fight, but the NDA ahead, and that's what the percentages show here.
You know what, interestingly, last time, both the main alliances were around the 37% mark. So these numbers would suggest a 6% increase in the NDA. Not surprising because Chirag Paswan and Upendra Kushwaha have joined the alliance compared to 2020. And it shows even the Mahagathbandhan going up from 37 to 41. Again, not surprising because this time they've also got the VIP party on their side who could bring a 3 to 4% possibly to their rank. Javed Ansari, first quick comments.
So it's not surprising. It's very much in line with what the reporters from the ground have been telling you, which of course, again, not surprisingly, is at variance with what the pundits sitting in air-conditioned studios have been saying. So I'm not surprised, and I still believe it will go down to the wire. Although having said that, I will also be not surprised if NDA doesn't eventually turn out to be the winner.
Okay. Now remember, is Bihar a state which is voting for the incumbent? Nitish Kumar has been chief minister for 20 years with just one short gap between 2013 and 14. Otherwise, he's been dominant, the longest serving chief minister of the Hindi heartland. Is Bihar a pro-incumbency or an anti-incumbency state is one of the big questions, even as we are bringing you that breaking news of Axis My India poll giving 43% to Nitish Kumar, to the Nitish Kumar-led NDA, 41% to the Mahagathbandhan. Prashant Kishor's Jan Suraaj is at only 4%, others are 12%. So a 2% gap in Bihar can become 20-30 seats at the very minimum in difference between the two alliances. Remember last time there was only 12,000 votes that separated the two alliances, and yet there was a healthy 18-seat edge eventually. And the exit poll is giving a 2% lead, 2% at the moment to the NDA over the Mahagathbandhan. How will it translate into seats? That's what we're going to tell you in a moment. The headlines. After the big turnout in Bihar, all eyes, will that big turnout result in pro or anti-incumbency? The India Today Axis My India exit poll will tell all. The Bihar exit poll numbers on gender show a clear surge in the Mahila vote share for NDA, but a strong support for the MGB among males and youth. Axis My India exit poll predicts first-timers and voters between the age of 20 to 29 want Tejasvi and not Nitish. Prime Minister Modi chairs a crucial cabinet meet on security at his residence days after the Red Fort blast. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, Home Minister Amit Shah, other union ministers at the meet. Massive hunt now launched for another car of terror. Police issue alert for a red EcoSport with registration number DL10CK0458. Police at all border points told to be fully armed. Poll 43% to NDA, 41% to Mahagathbandhan, 5% to Jan Suraaj. How is this translating into seats? We are now going to go region by region, and we are going to tell you the first region is Champaran. Purvi and Paschim Champaran taken together. Vote percentage, NDA has a 3% lead here, 44%, 41%, Jan Suraaj 6, others 9. How is this translating into seats? Now let's look at seats transfer, the tough task for any pollster. NDA gets 12 out of 21, Mahagathbandhan gets 9. But there is a story there because remember in 2020, the Mahagathbandhan got just 3 here and the NDA swept the region. So these are now gains for the Mahagathbandhan in the first region that we are looking at, which is Champaran. So historic Champaran, where remember Mahatma Gandhi had his satyagraha, which changed, many believe, the course of India's freedom movement. But let's get your immediate reactions to what you've seen in Champaran. Maria, these numbers clearly show that the Mahagathbandhan is scoring in areas where in 2020 they had losses. Was there local anti-incumbency against MLAs, many of whom were not changed?
Yes, and I think what worked in favor, may have worked in this particular region, is that the RJD, which is contesting on the maximum number of seats, which is 143, they had changed 40% of their candidates, which essentially meant that the sitting getting formula, which is usually applied in most states and most districts, was not applying this time around. And that is why I would say Purvi and Paschim Champaran, where last time around the NDA had an edge, the Mahagathbandhan seems to be
Quick
gaining.
responses right on the table. Yes, Preeti.
Rajdeep, Champaran was one region, Darbhanga is one region which was looked at swing districts this time around. Champaran, I was in Northern, the seat of Northern, where a sitting MLA today is of a BJP. This is also an area where there are two friendly fights as such between the Mahagathbandhan which are taking place in this area. This was an area where, the spotlight was on this area if the MGB will gain. And I'll tell you what could have been the difference on why we see this number, if this number actually holds. Because I would have thought the NDA would have made gains in Champaran. That difference, I think, is Jan Swaraj, Rajdeep. Jan Swaraj is very popular in this particular Saran, Sivan, Champaran, very popular, high migration
Sajjan,
population.
Are you surprised with the Champaran findings?
A bit surprised because despite the candidate factor, I expected that consolidation of EBCs, women factor should have retained the NDA. If these numbers were to be true, I'd bring the candidates' relatability, the local anti-incumbency as the sole factor that should give such a kind of number. So a bit surprising given the ground sentiment, but nevertheless, if it's true, it has to be more about the candidate than the pan.
Are you surprised, Rajat, that the BJP didn't drop more candidates? Normally, the Narendra Modi formula is you drop more than 50% of your sitting MLAs. They haven't done that in Bihar.
No, especially in Tirhut and Darbhanga region, which is part of in the neighborhood areas around the Champaran that you are defining as, BJP was able to sweep the entire region, and at least in these numbers, it doesn't seem like they've been able to sweep. Is this because of the strategy which BJP adopted of not changing and going by local incumbents? I don't know. BJP would have done their own calculations, but why and how is Mahagathbandhan able to gain ground on this is still something that we need to double click on.
Even before we go region by region, maybe we'll have to reverse the order and first give you the big numbers. Because what we now have is the Axis My India poll, big numbers. You're seeing them flashing on your screen. 43% place 41%. 4% to Jan Suraaj, 12 to others. That's the vote share. How is this translating into seats? That's the big one now. Take a look at what the seat share is looking like at the moment. As per the Axis My India poll at the moment, it is 98 to 118 to the Mahagathbandhan. 98 to 118 to the Mahagathbandhan. NDA getting 121 to 141. So you've got the NDA halfway mark is 131. Halfway mark for the Mahagathbandhan is 108. It's almost same as 2020. If you look at it in terms of seats, it's very, very similar. You've got Jan Suraaj 0 to 2, NDA 121 to 141. So even at their lower end, they are touching the majority mark. The Mahagathbandhan's best case 118. If that happens, then you have a possibility of being close, maybe not close enough, but certainly close, given that there are 1 to 7 others. So the Mahagathbandhan will hope that they get the top end of Axis My India. The NDA will hope they get the top end of that. But what you are seeing is an intensely competitive election in Bihar this time if the Axis My India numbers are to hold. That suggests a much closer contest than most people have predicted. Let's go right round the table with those big numbers. Are you surprised, Manisha Priyam, with those numbers?
Big numbers, I think there's greater comfort because I did see the NDA in the lead, but I did see a very tight contest. It's in the granular picture, and Champaran definitely surprising me because I do see it as an RSS stronghold, let alone an NDA stronghold. So I think there would be many nuances, many regional pictures, but the big picture holds.
Javed.
It confirms reports from the ground that it is a seat by seat and a much closer election than as is being predicted.
Preeti.
Rajdeep, I did think India had the edge. It's a close election. But if these numbers hold, Rajdeep, the fact what I see here is I doubt if the Mahagathbandhan has the stamina then to hold on to 118 or get closer to 120. I think that stamina, the advantage now clearly lies with the NDA. If you look at, the components of the Mahagathbandhan, the weakest link will be the Congress. The left is not doing as much. Possibly it will be the RJD, which will be the single largest party.
We'll come to the
If these
breakdown.
numbers
We'll
hold.
come to
If these numbers hold.
to individual parties because that might well tell a story, particularly of whether Mahagathbandhan is being pulled down by its own allies. These numbers could even result in the RJD once again becoming the single largest party and yet not being able to cross the halfway mark. Gaurav, your first remarks.
The bigger picture, when I interviewed Amit Shah in Purnia, he was very confident that they're actually crossing 160. And the BJP was giving details of man-on-man marking, seat-on-seat marking. They seem to think that they are on the higher side of this 141. However, people we spoke to on ground. So, for example, even when you went to Mokama, in a tola where you had the Bhumihars, you had the JDU ahead. In a tola where you had, the RJD supporters or the Yadavs, you had the Yadavs ahead. So, it's very strong caste-based voting that has happened in Bihar.
What is evident here, Rajdeep, is that we seem to have overestimated the women factor. Otherwise, that would have led to a clean sweep for the NDA, driven by the women voters. And again, the underestimated perhaps the youth factor, which seemed to be also pushing Tejasvi closer to the halfway mark.
Well, if the women were not there, it would be even more trouble for the NDA. That's also very clear when you have a 5% lead and eventually it's coming down to 2%. Sajjan, your first comments on those big numbers. Are we going to see on Friday a much closer contest than many other exit pollsters have been predicting? I've seen polls giving NDA even as high as 160.
Let me reconcile my ground insight and Axis numbers. I would like to go by the lower denominator for Gathbandhan and higher denominator for the NDA. That's how I reconcile my feedback on the ground and the Axis numbers.
What's the difference according to you?
So that's 90, 90, 98.
What's the difference between the two alliances? Where is that big edge to the NDA coming from, Sajjan?
So that's again, the Mahila factor is there. That was very much visible. And two, Tejasvi's traction in 2020 was beyond the core constituency, right? That's something that we did not see this time beyond Muslims and Yadavs. Here and there, because of the candidate factor, you see the traction. But Tejasvi as a person who is appealing, who is someone who is making a mark in the mindset, that is something that we did not see happening in 2021. That was a fresh Tejasvi. This time, he was seen more as a leader of the Yadavs, not as a leader of the youths.
Okay,
right?
that's a contentious point. I'll just add one element to that. The 2020 elections, remember, were held in the backdrop of COVID. Lots of migration, lots of anguish and anxiety that people faced. Tejasvi, with his promise of 10 lakh jobs, which was achievable, or was a dream that people believed could be realized, was able to attract people at that time. Again, the Congress let him down, if you recall. I've always believed 2020 was Tejasvi's election to win. But Rajat, your first remarks to the big numbers.
I think Pradeep ji is just hedging. He is just hedging on both the sides.
No, so are you saying that Pradeep Gupta is virtually suggesting a potential hung assembly? I can tell you that I spoke this morning to Prashant Kishor. Prashant Kishor is saying, don't rule out a hung assembly, but go ahead.
No, I don't care about individual making a remark. We're talking about data. Now, if a data of 2%, you need to look at the maps of how the 2% is localized versus generalized across the state of Bihar. Having said that, looking at the numbers and looking at whatever distribution that you can presume of the women voters, I just believe that Pradeep ji is hedging here on both the extremes, wherein one extreme is a hung assembly and the other is,
this is
a
actually
clear win.
I'm just going to stop you for a moment. I'm going to play that graphic again that you just saw beyond the big numbers. We are now going to go into the party split. This, according to me, is the story also within a story of Bihar. Which party is pulling what, how many seats? Take a look at this. As per the Axis My India poll, BJP 50 to 56, that's down almost 20. Remember, they got 75 last time. They are down between 50 to 56, midpoint 53. JDU, which was 43 last time, is now at a midpoint of 59. So the JDU gaining, BJP coming down. The Lok Janshakti doing very well. Many people have written it off. 29 seats contesting, leading as per the survey, 11 to 16. Could Chirag Paswan have become that critical factor with his 5% vote? Remember, his father, Ramvilas Paswan, always knew how to be on the winning side. The rest 4 to 7, and that includes Upendra Kushwaha and the Hindustani Awam Morcha Secular of Jiten Ram Majhi. And Majhi, of course, has chosen good seats. He knows how to choose the right seats. On the other side, RJD 67 to 76. If you looked at purely this as Kaun Banega Sabse Badi Party, RJD once again. Halfway mark 72. So RJD is almost repeating as per Pradeep Gupta's the performance it did in 2020.
But he's contesting much more also this time.
He is
BJP is contesting less, JDU is contesting less,
50% strike rate on both the
each.
sides.
So